Good evening. How's everybody doing? Wednesday, no Warriors game today. Looked like Boston beat Miami. So that series is what, 3-2 now? Warriors are going to try to close out the gentleman's sweep tomorrow. So that means we have a little bit more time to talk 49ers tonight. I had a great day at the 49ers facility today. Some one-on-one time with assistant coaches, which is always, and was very insightful this time. Every single season, the COVID year might have been a little bit different, but every single season we get some time with the assistant coaches at the 49ers facility. And maybe they'll do it twice. Maybe we'll get some time during training camp. It was awesome to get it a little bit earlier during OTAs this time around, because it's kind of going to prime what we look for over the next several weeks, and then, of course, over the next few months. So I'm going to share some of the insights that I gleaned from a handful of conversations today, and then everything that I learned is going to be coming out on a piece in The Athletic in just a couple days. Matt and Barrows and I are co-writing it as we speak. There was a lot of material. We're parsing through it. The 49ers obviously made some staff changes this offseason because there were some defections, right? Mike McDaniel left to be the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. He took some 49ers coaches with him, and then you had other departures that were unrelated to that. Rich Scangarello, former quarterbacks coach, he went to Kentucky, the University of Kentucky, where Zach Yenzer also now is. That's the former 49ers assistant offensive line coach. So you had to have new assistants come in to fill those roles, and the 49ers, Shanahan was really busy at around the time of the combine. He didn't even go to Indianapolis because he was busy filling out his coaching staff, with the headlining addition being Brian Griese, the quarterbacks coach. Got him from the booth, Monday Night Football, for Brian Griese. Before this, now he's going to be working with Trey Lance. It's going to be a collaborative effort. And, Anthony Lynn is probably going to be part of that. He was another headlining signing this offseason. He's officially the assistant head coach and the running backs coach. Well, today we just had a chance to talk to all those guys, and I'm really excited to share some of that information with you. So those of you just coming in, go ahead and like the channel, subscribe to the channel. I'll take a look at some questions throughout this, but we're going to go through the 3 or 4 big conversations that I had today that I wanted to highlight on this video. Hope everybody had a good dinner tonight. Always important to eat well on a Wednesday to get you through that week. All right. So first of all, Kris Kocurek. The session starts. I go straight to the corner where Kris Kocurek is standing, and I got some, good time with Kris Kocurek before the scrum came over. Several solid minutes talking defensive line play. I think the defensive line coaches, the good ones, the really talkative ones, they will teach you more about football in a 5 or 10 minute conversation, or a 30-minute, depending on how long you're lucky to have with them. Those guys will teach you more about football than any other coach. I'm convinced, and maybe I'm biased, but I talked to Larry Johnson, the very well-respected Ohio State defensive line coach, back in 2019, 2 or 3 days after the 49ers drafted Nick Bosa. And it was a 30 to 40-minute conversation on the phone. And I'll tell you what, I don't think I'll ever learn as much in 30 or 40 minutes than when I talked to Larry Johnson in that conversation after the 49ers picked Bosa, telling me about the side scissors, the hand movements, the balance that Nick Bosa has to pass rush with, what he's keeping in mind. That, the casual viewer, you just don't know this stuff until you talk to one of these gurus, and then you get it. Then you get why Ohio State produces these edge rushers year after year after year. So it was Nick Bosa, then it was Chase Young. And before those guys, Larry Johnson was producing amazing players at Penn State. So it was Penn State, Tamba Hali. I mean, so many top-tier pass rushers have come from the school of Larry Johnson. Nick Bosa is one of them. Anyway, I got so much out of that conversation in 2019, and ever since then, I've had a lot of conversations with Kris Kocurek, and I've gotten a lot out of each and every one, including today's. In today's conversation with Kocurek, we talked about what the 49ers look for in prospective defensive line acquisitions. And he was so insistent on saying that talent is only 50% of this. A big part of what the 49ers do along the defensive line and their accentuation of that position group is just an insane amount of work. I mean, you would think that the NFL might be standardized across the board. Like, okay, now you've made it to the league. Anywhere that you go, you're going to, see around the same amount of work. But as soon as you go to a 49ers practice, you realize that's not true. As soon as you see the corner of the field with Kris Kocurek is barking and yelling and telling those guys to pound the sleds, this ups the ante a little bit. So Kris Kocurek, the guy when he's not in coaching mode is just so serene, so patient. So, it's nothing like what you see the raccoon on meth, right? That's what his mentor, Jim Washburn, called him. What you see when he steps in between the lines. So I'm talking about the mentality that he wants, the list of characteristics that he wants out of 49ers defensive linemen. And Kris Kocurek, very calmly today said, I want somebody who's going to subscribe to the absolute 100% that I'm going to give them. And not everybody's going to be cut out for that. Not even, the typical NFL player might not be cut out for it. And the 49ers, they make hard and sure during the NFL draft research process, during free agency, when they're talking to prospective defensive linemen to sign. This year, they brought in Trey and Hassan Ridgeway. They make sure that every single player that they bring in is going to be ready for the increased workload and the increased attention that comes from the two defensive line coaches, Kris Kocurek and his assistant, Darryl Tapp. And the 49ers do believe that through Drake Jackson, edge rusher out of USC, through Kalia Davis, the defensive tackle from Central Florida, who has a really interesting linebacker, really interesting background as an inside stack linebacker. In fact, I asked Kris about that today. Kocurek said that, nowhere in his 13 years of NFL coaching has he seen a guy who played stack linebacker in college on the inside convert to defensive tackle. But that's exactly what Kalia Davis did. And that's also the case with Kevin Atkins, the defensive tackle out of Fresno State. The 49ers believe that all three of these guys, plus the two free agents they brought in, and obviously they brought in Kerry Hyder, who already has proven to work well with the 49ers and Kocurek, they believe that these guys are cut from the right cloth to be able to succeed in this room. And boy, they have 16 defensive linemen right now on this roster. They had a waive one the other day, Chris Slayton, practice squad guy last year, to make room for Tyler Kroft, the tight end on the roster. And Slayton got picked up. He got claimed off waivers right away by the Green Bay Packers. And it's no surprise to me. That's how hot of a position group Kris Kocurek is running with the 49ers. Somebody gets waived, another team's going to swoop that guy up, because the Packers said, if he's been working with Kris Kocurek for a while here, the 49ers had him for a while. We want to see what that's all about. So the rest of the league respects the 49ers defensive line. The rest of the league, I think you've probably seen a copycat effect after the 49ers have been to 2 NFC championship games and a Super Bowl in 3 seasons. They're built from that defensive line. Strength in numbers is their motto there. That's the formula for success. And because that has worked so well for the 49ers, I think you're seeing a burgeoning of that success elsewhere, right? You're seeing other teams start to adopt the 49ers strategies. You're seeing Kris Kocurek get a lot of praise, and he might be the 49ers' most valuable assistant coach. And we'll see what he can make out of the group this year, because they certainly look impressive on paper. Speaking of that, why don't we take a look at each position group as I talk about my conversation with their coaches. And I'm going to open this up for questions at each position group. So if you have a question about Kris Kocurek and my conversation with him, go ahead and put it in the comments section. I want to pop open the roster right here so we could look at the 49ers defensive line and talk about 16 bodies. Well, here they are. Bosa, Armstead, Kinlaw, Ebukam, Amenahu, Kerry Hyder, Hassan Ridgeway, Kamoko Toure, Maurice Hurst, who they re-signed this offseason. Didn't get to see much of him last year due to injuries. Drake Jackson, obviously the draft pick. I got Jordan Willis, Kevin Gibbons, Kevin Atkins, Alex Barrett all on the outside looking in, and Kalia Davis starting the season on an injury report. D Ford expected to be released next month. That's 16 defensive linemen on the roster. So let's hear questions about Kris Kocurek and that 49ers D-line room before we move on to what was the next interview. Kocurek, I'm not going to get to anything else but Kocurek right now. We'll go through each of these. Let's go. Nothing? Come on. Ray Arvizu, the defensive line is going to destroy. Well, if they stay healthy, boy, this unit can be really good. It took a little bit last year, right? The 49ers didn't hit their stride. Really, they didn't hit the monstrous stride until about week 14. Sansom Ebukam turned it on at the end of the season. That's another great Kris Kocurek success story. He played a different position for the Rams. He wasn't at that pure edge rushing spot 100% of the time. They put him in the 4-3. They put him coming off the edge. Kris Kocurek really values the 10-yard burst. Ebukam, with his athleticism, obviously has that. And once he figured it out, especially once Bosa started getting all that attention because he was having a career year on the other side, Ebukam stepped up. Charles Omenihu, turned into a force toward the end of the season. Jordan Willis obviously made some plays that the 49ers couldn't live without down the stretch run. So Kocurek's track record is so impressive, and now he's got Kerry Hyder back. And, I asked him today, if you guys stay as healthy as you want to stay on the edge, obviously DJ Jones is the player you have to replace, and he played on the interior. So is it safe to say that Kerry Hyder, who was your best edge rusher in 2020 because Nick Bosa tore his ACL, is it safe to say that he might get more inside snaps than outside snaps? And Kris Kocurek said, yeah, even though he's undersized, he's just so tight with his hands. He can overcome a relative lack of size on the inside. Hyder can overcome that to win on the inside with technically. He has the technical skills to win on the inside. And then you got a bigger body in Ridgeway that they signed. Obviously, Armstead could play on the inside. I mean, that's coaching right there. Kris Kocurek, he commits to giving every ounce of his being. He told me today that this was, I wish I could pull up the quote, but it'll be in the story on Athletic when you see it here in a couple days. Commits every ounce of his being from the moment that he wakes up to the moment that he leaves the facility, goes back home and rests. He gives it all to his players. And I'm not just saying this. I sit there at these practices. I watch the sweat dripping from Kocurek's forehead. This guy is yelling. I mean, he's got the raspy voice. And today he was telling me I give every ounce of my energy to give these guys a chance to improve and hit their maximum potential so they can make as much money as possible, which in turn helps out them and their families. And guess who Kris Kocurek did that for last year? Arden Key. Arden Key showed up as an edge rusher who had struggled with the Raiders for 3 years. He left as a player who could play anywhere along the defensive line, who had made his money, who had made his hay rushing from the inside for the 49ers, and he got paid by Trent Baalke and the Jacksonville Jaguars. This season, maybe you see Kerry Hyder get paycheck number 2 thanks to Kris Kocurek. Well, even earlier in his career, Kerry Hyder worked with Kocurek with the Lions, and Kocurek might have helped him out. But Hyder, of course, signed for the minimum or around there for the 49ers in 2020. 8.5 sacks later, gets paid by the Seattle Seahawks. They released him. The 49ers pick up Hyder again at near the minimum. And based on the way Kocurek is talking, every single player is going to be able to find a role, have a fit. They don't, just sign guys for the hell of it. Even Kevin Atkins, the undrafted free agent out of Fresno State, he's a nose tackle type. Every one of those players, the 49ers and Kocurek, see some sort of fit on this defensive line. And I'll tell you what, I cannot talk about this D-line enough because it is the heartbeat of this 49ers team. All right. What is Kinlaw's status? Is he the reason they felt they could let Jones go? There's several reasons why the 49ers felt they could let DJ Jones go. Javon Kinlaw is obviously one very important piece of this defensive line. Javon Kinlaw had dealt with knee issues throughout his first 2 seasons in the NFL. Some of them had been a bit mysterious to the 49ers. They weren't quite sure what was wrong with the knee, and they believe that they have finally found the root of the issue, that they believe that it was actually ACL damage. Neil Elatrash, who's the big ACL physician, he did Nick Bosa's surgery, did ACL reconstruction surgery on Javon Kinlaw this past year in 2021. It was around week 9 or week 10. And now Javon Kinlaw is in the best shape that the 49ers have seen him in. So you have to hope, if you're the 49ers, that the knee issues are behind him because his ACL has now been repaired. They're expecting him to be back in training camp. He's a little bit lighter than he has been with the 49ers. I mean, he's still big. He's still big, right? But a little bit lighter, and he's going to slot in there at a 3 technique for you, and he's going to be a really, really strong, physically strong 3 technique against the run. And anything you could get beyond that is gravy, right? You develop the pass rushing skills as well as you might. But Javon Kinlaw is not a player that's going to show up on too many sack stat sheets. he's going to be a player that does a lot of the dirty work just because he's built like a pillar of granite in the middle of that defense. And you've got to be able to anchor down. You've got to be able to take on the double teams. You have to be destructive in ways that the casual fan might not see, but he's got the size to do it. And now they have to hope that he has the health to do it in his knee. I'll tell you what, the other day, Javon was doing some, he put it up on his Instagram. He was doing those one-leg squats and hops up onto the bench and putting a lot of strain on the surgically repaired knee, and it looked like it was healthy. And by all accounts, Kris Kocurek is excited. The 49ers are excited that this guy might be ready to turn the corner and give them some uninterrupted football after so much of it had been interrupted by those injuries over the past few seasons. All right, anything more about Kris Kocurek? Let's ask about these defensive linemen. Do I think the defense will be carrying the offense? I think the defense will be the locomotive that's driving this train. But I don't think anything is permanent. I think the offense might have some growing pains, and I think the offense will come into its own as time goes by. But I do think that the 49ers, their formula this season lies in having a top 2, top 3 defense. I think they need to take a page out of the 2019 book when it was a top 2 defense. They had the 2 defense and the number 7 offense that year with a decent special teams. Well, last season, the 49ers had a really good offense. They were in the top 5 offensively. But for most of the season, that defense was a bottom half defense. And then the defense turned it on. I mean, when that defensive line kicked into gear, when the cornerback position figured things out, some experience got, under the belts of guys like Ambry Thomas and Dante Johnson stepped up late in the year, the 49ers were playing top 5 defense. And they just got that in time. They probably would have wished they had that a little bit sooner to be in better playoff position, maybe get the playoff seedings and the home game and all that. But they essentially needed that late season surge to salvage what was a very poor start. I think this season, the defense may have to be there early because the offense may be the unit with Trey Lance, starting not for the first time ever in his career, but starting a season for the first time. You will expect there to be a bit of a learning curve, and you will want that defense to give the 49ers some window of opportunity, maybe margin for error, if you will, early in the season. All right, good stuff. Let's move on. Let's go to the next position group. Chris Foerster. So I just talked about the defensive line. Why don't I talk about the offensive line? Chris Foerster is bullish on Aaron Banks at left guard. So why don't we take a look at the 49ers depth chart along the offensive line? I highlighted it right here. Trent Williams slotted in at left tackle. Alex Mack at center. Of course, we're still waiting. I asked Foerster, when did you last hear from Alex Mack? And he said, he texted me right before phase 1 started, which was about a month ago, and he said he wouldn't be there, and that's all I've heard. I think the 49ers are legitimately in the dark, at least some of the 49ers, about what's going to happen with Alex Mack this coming year. That's the read I get. I mean, Kyle Shanahan is saying cryptic things you should know. I have a pretty good idea, all this, all that. Again, there are 2 options with Alex Mack. Either he's waiting to retire for June 1st, which would make sense because that would alleviate the salary cap dead money hit this year, or he's coming back for sure, and the 49ers are just playing a coy to screw around with the media and the rest of the league. But for now, I still have Alex Mack in there with 2 asterisks, which means that retirement is a possibility. You have Daniel Brunskill slotted in at right guard. Mike McGlinchey expected back for training camp, just like Javon Kinlaw. In fact, they've been rehabbing together. He's at right tackle. Aaron Banks, as you can see, I have him slotted in there at left guard. And Foerster today was bullish about Aaron Banks' prospects of starting at left guard. In fact, Chris Foerster told me that the 49ers were considering starting Aaron Banks late last season. But it made so many strides over the course of 2021 that the 49ers were like, maybe we need to throw this guy in at right guard instead of Daniel Brunskill, who was the 49ers' weakest offensive lineman in 2021. But then they hit that win streak, right? And they didn't, they said, if it ain't broke, you don't fix it. And ultimately, the 49ers decided not to thrust Aaron Banks in there. The offensive line stayed healthy. I mean, the injury that you did have happened at one of the tackle positions with Trent Williams, but he was able to gut it out and play in that NFC Championship game. Wasn't his best game, obviously, but still, Aaron Banks remained unused because the guard positions remained intact and the 49ers didn't need him. But now they're going to need him because Laken Tomlinson is with the New York Jets. And Chris Foerster says that Aaron Banks is more comfortable on the left side than he is on the right side. He played left guard at Notre Dame, and now he's going to be playing left guard for the 49ers. So Banks has reworked his body. He was 338 pounds at the Senior Bowl. That was way back in 2021. Now he's much lower. I would say about 20 pounds lower. But even more importantly, even if that number weight is a little bit higher than we expect it to be, it's very clear. And I got the good look at Aaron Banks at OTAs the other day. It's very clear that the strength and conditioning staff has had him rework some of that baby fat into muscle. And he looks much more like an NFL-ready player, especially one for the outside zone now. So take it from Foerster. The 49ers have a lot riding on Aaron Banks. We'll see how he ends up panning out here in 2022. Not guaranteeing anything either way. But I'll tell you what, the 49ers are very reliant right now on Aaron Banks, because if that domino doesn't fall the way the 49ers need it to, well, then the rest of the offensive line is going to be in a world of hurt, because you have a lot of uncertainty with some of these names, some of these rookies, Zakelj, Donovan West, Spencer Burford. Uncertainty means that you want fewer question marks. And Banks is no longer a rookie. He can take care of one of those question marks at that left guard position. All right, let's take a look at some of these questions. I want to see more of them. Anything about Kris Foerster and the 49ers offensive line? I'm keeping this organized today. Foerster and the offensive line. I see a little tip question from Tobin Ernst. Thanks. I'll get to that when we talk about some other position groups. I want to see some offensive line stuff. Let's go. Is Moore strictly at guard now? Yes, I believe the 49ers believe that Moore will be at a guard position unless they have a pinch need at tackle. And I think Moore was like a second or third string tackle at the practice the other day. But they do want Moore to be at a guard spot. Last year they needed him at that tackle spot due to a drainage of talent due to injuries on the exterior. Did Foerster mention options at center? Yes, we talked about center as well. Jake Brendel and Dan Brunskill are the two leaders in the clubhouse. The 49ers, two legitimate start now options if Alex Mack does indeed retire. But other options, given some seasoning, would be the rookies. Nick Zakelj, they're looking at him at center. They gave him a couple snaps there the other day. Donovan West, undrafted free agent out of Arizona State. He actually was a center in college for Herm Edwards and the Sun Devils. And Jason Poe, the Mercer product, who is still very raw. He's a guy, because he played at Lenoir-Rhyne and Mercer, smaller schools, is going to have a lot taught to him about the intricacies of the big-time football on the NFL level. But he's tremendously athletic, great pull blocker. 49ers looking at him as a guard and a center. Who knows, maybe even some H-back snaps. But Poe's in that room now, and he's also got some center capabilities moving into the future. But for the short term, Jake Brendel, Daniel Brunskill. Now, if it's Brunskill, that would obviously require somebody to take the right guard spot, because Brunskill currently has the right guard spot. So key to see that. So I'll make this a little bit bigger for you guys just so you can see. Look at the offensive line. See McKivitz, the 49ers looking at him. He's a swing kind of guy, tackle guard. Burford looking at him as a guard. Brendel is center depth. Jalen Moore, I have him on a depth chart as a guard. Obviously some tackle experience. Zakelj, guard. Sam Schluter, he's a tackle, undrafted free agent out of Minnesota. Now, Keaton Sutherland, that's another option at center that I didn't mention. 49ers poached him off of a practice squad. He has played some center before. He lined up at center in the OTA on Tuesday. Donovan West, UDFA, Arizona State. I just talked about Poe. Justin School is back from his torn ACL. He can be a swing tackle type. Then obviously you have your international exception, Alfredo Gutierrez, a tackle. All right, moving on. We have any more? Do you think the O-line will be better at pass protection this year? Boy, I don't know. Depends. You lost Laken Tomlinson. I know he wasn't a great pass protector, but he was just a solid player. If you lose Alex Mack, I don't know if they will yet. You know that he was a solid player. Daniel Brunskill, I mean, if you can improve right guard, because he wasn't a good pass protector at right guard, then you have a chance to be better. But there are a lot of questions to answer. You got Trent on the left side. You McGlinchey coming back from a quad tear on the right side. What are you going to get out of left guard, center, and right guard? That's what I'm going to document this offseason. And by the way, those of you who are new, I document stuff very meticulously. So go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Check out The Athletic if you're just coming in right now. Like and subscribe to the YouTube for sure. That's very easy. It's just as simple as clicking a button. Tobin Ernst, is there any way that the 49ers are better on the offensive line this year? Well, Aaron Banks is going to have to be a stud if that's going to be the case. I think Alex Mack returning would be necessary for that because center is so important and you want experience. Kris Foerster told me it's more about experience than intelligence at center. Yeah, obviously you want intelligence, and the 49ers have a lot of smart guys, but experience is so big, and Alex Mack has 13 years of it. If he plays in 2022, he'd be going on his 14th season in the NFL. So if you can get those two positions locked down, center and left guard so much riding on Banks, then, you could figure something out at right guard, and maybe you can be better than you were last year. But I think it's an uphill battle for the 49ers, and boy, you just got to hold your breath because it's important that they block well in front of Trey Lance. Brunskill he's got this slight knee tendonitis. It's nothing the 49ers are all too worried about, so they're holding him out of OTAs, at least for now. We'll see next Wednesday if Brunskill is back out there. All right, I'm going to move on to the next position group because I've already been talking for 26 minutes. So let me hide this. Let me make the screen bigger, and we'll go on to the next banner. Brian Griese, the Mike Shanahan, John Elway connection. This is the 49ers' new quarterbacks coach, was a Monday Night Football commentator for the past several seasons. Brian Griese is now the 49ers QB coach. Now, remember, they're going with the village strategy here. They're using a lot of guys to help coach up these QBs. And Trey Lance is the headlining name, but Nate Sudfeld's in that room as well. And so is Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, but Mr. Relevant in the 49ers' hearts, the number 262 overall pick, very final selection of the 2022 draft. And Brian Griese has never coached before, but Brian Griese's got very, very interesting experience, starting with the fact that Mike Shanahan drafted him, so that he first met Kyle Shanahan back in the late 90s in Denver. But Mike Shanahan drafted Griese out of Michigan when John Elway was still with the Broncos. And Griese's first year was as Elway's backup as the Broncos won a Super Bowl. That's the one that they beat the Atlanta Falcons in. Ed McCaffrey was on that team as well, scored on that deep post touchdown in the Super Bowl. So Brian Griese immediately entered the league in a very similar kind of environment as Trey Lance, learning behind a veteran quarterback, seeing a playoff run with his own eyes, experiencing that playoff run right away. And then he took over the starting job. And that's obviously what we expect Trey Lance to do this season. Now, Griese never moved as well as Trey Lance, but he did play in a Shanahan offense. And he learned a Shanahan offense over his first several seasons in the National Football League. And that's exactly what Trey Lance is going to have to do for the 49ers. But the prototype for a Kyle Shanahan offense, just like it was for a Mike Shanahan offense, is a quarterback who can deliver from the pocket, but also be able to add and dimension with his legs. So the dream quarterbacks for Mike Shanahan were Steve Young, when he was the offensive coordinator of the 49ers from 1992 to 1994, and John Elway, when he was the head coach of the Broncos and won a pair of Super Bowls. I maintained in the lead up to the 2021 draft, when everybody was telling you that the 49ers would take Mac Jones, I maintained that the pick would be Trey Lance, because Kyle Shanahan knows the value that comes with a diversified skill set. And I thought that in Trey Lance, he would see the pocket passing precision ability, potentially, right? You got to develop that, of a Steve Young or a John Elway, combined with the running ability of a Steve Young or a John Elway. Hence the ultimate pick, hence why you would trade up so much draft capital, number 3, to nab the guy. You wouldn't trade up to number 3 to get somebody who would still be there a little bit later on in the draft, at number 10 or number 11 for the 49ers in Mac Jones. And that's exactly what they did. And it just so happens that Brian Griese, in his first year in the NFL, just like you saw Trey Lance learning under Jimmy Garoppolo, was the veteran who showed him the ropes, Brian Griese learned under John Elway. And John Elway happens to be the prototype, along with Steve Young, for a Shanahan offense due to his ability to threaten defenses with both his arm and his mobility. So I just thought that, all the stars aligned. And Brian Griese has the type of experience that the 49ers want in that quarterback room, coaching up Trey Lance. It's not going to be an individual effort, though. While Griese can give Trey Lance his expertise that comes from the years of experience that, have all these interesting connections to what the 49ers are looking at now, schematically and, from a coaching technique perspective, he might still be a little bit rough around the edges just because this is a new venture for him. So the 49ers actually have a very interesting setup around Trey Lance. They have Bobby Slowick, the pass game coordinator, who's already worked with Trey. He's still going to be in the room. He's still near the quarterback huddle at practices. Anthony Lynn, former head coach. Obviously, he's working with the running backs, but he's going to be working a little bit with the quarterbacks. They have Brian Fleury, the tight ends coach. He's a former tight end, former quarterback at Towson University a long time ago, who's coached on like all kinds of positions on both sides of the ball. One of the reasons why he's the tight ends coach is that so the 49ers can dial things in with Trey Lance. He's talking about route depth. He's talking about all the precision of the short game that can help Trey from a tight end coaching position, right? So he's making sure his guys are on the cohesive page with Lance so that Lance can deliver from the pocket at the NFL level that Kyle Shanahan wants. So, we go from Brian Griese to Bobby Slowick to Anthony Lynn to Kyle Shanahan himself working with his coaches, to Brian Fleury, the tight ends coach, to Leonard Hankerson, the wide receivers coach who played 5 years under Kyle Shanahan over in Washington. You see all these guys, all this 49ers staff upheaval, staff reorganization. The 49ers believe they can tie this all together and they could coach Trey Lance collectively, that they can coach the individual components of what Trey Lance is going to need to succeed into one cohesive unit. And Brian Griese, I think, is one of the hires that they hope binds all this together because of his experience under Mike Shanahan with John Elway and how all that relates to the blueprint that the 49ers are working with now. All right, questions now about this quarterback position. I'm going to be quiet here for a couple seconds as I go through some of these questions. Let's check it out. Ray Arvizu has another good one. Trey looked more comfortable talking to the press conference. He's becoming a leader. Absolutely. One of the things the 49ers really loved about Trey Lance was the personality and the intelligence, the ability to convey what he needed to, not only through words, but also through demeanor at any given time. And last year, Trey Lance knew his place. He was Jimmy Garoppolo's backup. He had a lot to learn. His head was swimming, and Trey Lance was reserved. He stayed away from, making grandiose statements in front of the media. And he did what you want a backup rookie quarterback to do. He didn't put himself into unnecessary headlines. I'm not saying he's putting himself into unnecessary headlines this year, but Trey Lance is now acting like a starting quarterback. He's got the bravado. He's got a little bit of swagger, but it's also a friendly, approachable swagger. It's an inviting swagger. It's good with the media. That's one of the responsibilities of a starting quarterback. And you could definitely sense the uptick in comfort from Trey Lance. That personality is now showing. And again, he knows his place. The 49ers expect to trade Jimmy Garoppolo. Kyle Shanahan said that straight up on Tuesday. Trey Lance knows that a clean takeover of the starting quarterback position is very, very likely in his future. 49ers breakdown. Thank you for being a class sack. Did you notice Trey keeping the ball down when throwing over the middle of the field? Last year, some of those balls would sail high. Well, first of all, Trey didn't throw that much the other day. So I'm going to keep a closer eye on this as we move into more 11-on-11 stuff, more OTAs. I'll next be out on the practice field on Wednesday. But, Trey's finger was literally crooked for most of last season after he chipped it against the Raiders at the end of the preseason. So if passes were sailing on him, it's very likely because he was hurt last year. He was throwing with an injured finger for the 49ers. He's fully healthy now. I thought that his accuracy looked fine. They were only playing 7-on-7 ball. I don't even track 7-on-7 ball. Somebody told me that he went 16 of 18 or 17 of 19. To be honest, in 7-on-7 drills, it doesn't really matter. When they went on 11-on-11, nobody had helmets on, so it wasn't even full speed stuff. So the passes look fine. They look crisp to me, but only time will tell if they'll indeed stay crisp in more pressurized situations. But I will tell you that Trey Lance disclosed that he was playing with, a compromised finger throughout last season. So Trey will not be competing for the starting position. Well, maybe he'll be competing for the starting position, but he's definitely in the driver's seat to take it. Now, there's a chance that they don't trade Jimmy Garoppolo. They don't get an offer, whatever. The injury stretches out into training camp. It's very possible that the 49ers, too, once camp starts, depending on where Trey is, will want Trey to actually beat Jimmy out if Jimmy is still on the roster. because competition is good for players. This is a meritocracy. This is football. People aren't simply handed jobs, especially a QB1 job at the San Francisco 49ers. This franchise is a legacy of competition, a great competition at the quarterback position. So there's a possibility that Trey has to beat Jimmy out. But I'm telling you what, their plan is to trade Jimmy, right? At some point, they're going to jettison Jimmy Garoppolo. Is there a permutation where he stays on the team and starts this season? Yes. I mean, Trey can get hurt tomorrow. Trey can get hurt during training camp. And if they still have Garoppolo, they'll be happy that they do still have him at the time. But the most likely option is once Garoppolo gets healthy, the market starts picking up. They'll trade Jimmy. They save the $24 million, and Trey has that clean takeover of the position. But in between now and then, there could be competition. There could be diversions that we don't expect. It's all on the table moving forward. Do you think it's telling that Griese hasn't spoken with Jimmy yet? No, I don't. Jimmy has gone off the radar this offseason. I think it's telling that Kyle Shanahan said that Jimmy Garoppolo will probably be traded. He expects Jimmy to be traded. That's all you need to know. Let's not look into little tea leaves and nuggets if we don't need to. The 49ers expect to trade Jimmy Garoppolo. They couldn't have been more clear about this. Jimmy's laying low right now because he's rehabbing from the shoulder surgery. All right, I'm going to go on to the next position unless you guys have any other questions about Brian Griese. What's everybody? Oh, no, I thought you said where are you all eating tonight? What am I eating tonight? We had a happy hour for the Athletics. So I ate at Schroeder's in the city right near Embarcadero, downtown financial district. I ate at Schroeder's. Had some pretzels and some good fried chicken sandwiches. That's what I had. If I'm hungry later on, I probably won't be because I'm tired. I'm a little bit on Central Time, even though I'm on the West Coast. If I'm hungry later on, I got an In-N-Out burger like right around the corner right here. So I'm going to go get some In-N-Out, maybe get some protein style. Fernando, Trey Lance's quick release seemed to improve. Did you notice? Yeah. I mean, he looked crisp. He looked confident. I mean, some of it could be the mechanics of the release are a little bit better, and some of it could be just more confident with the reads in the 7-on-7. And the 49ers like the 7-on-7 stuff because it forces Trey to scan the field, operate from the pocket. There's no pass rush, so he's not taking off and running. That's stuff that should get better over time, and I think it is getting better over time. I'll tell you what, though. The 49ers hadn't seen Trey Lance in an actual practice, hadn't worked with him on the field since January. It's 4 long months. He's been working away from the facility. Physically, he looks healthy. It looks like he got some time off. And, boy, it's time to roll up the sleeves right now, get to work, and we'll see how this progresses over the course of this offseason. Finally, I talked to Johnny Holland, 49ers linebackers coach. Obviously, he was dealing with cancer treatments this past season, multiple myeloma treatments. I am happy to report that Johnny Holland is feeling much better. He missed about 25 days of work last year, but even on the days that he missed, he was able to zoom into the 49ers meetings. And, I think it's a testament to Johnny Holland, who's a former NFL linebacker himself. He played for the Green Bay Packers. I mean, just an upstanding man. Johnny Holland, you talk to him and you feel better about yourself. That kind of guy. It's a testament to him how the 49ers linebacker group didn't skip a beat last year. And I think you could legitimately call the 49ers linebackers the best linebacking crew in the National Football League. And that was even with their position coach out dealing with multiple myeloma treatments for about 3 weeks of the year last year, those 25 days last season. He has embedded a culture in the linebacking room. He's turned Fred Warner, a former 3rd-round pick, into a star. He's turned Dre Greenlaw, a former 5th-round pick, into a very solid player. He's turned Azeez Al-Shire, a former undrafted free agent, into a very solid player. I mean, it's telling that Greenlaw and Al-Shire, both of those guys are going to be in line to get paid this offseason, and they're both lower round or undrafted players. So the 49ers are looking strong at the linebacker position, and I found out that Dre Greenlaw actually played cornerback in high school. Isn't that crazy? Johnny Holland shared that with me today. By the way, it's Dre Greenlaw's birthday today. Happy 25th birthday to Dre Greenlaw. But, okay, Greenlaw played corner in high school. Fred Warner played DB in college. You could see the 49ers have a type. In fact, Oren Burks, their newest linebacker they signed to the Green Bay Packers, was a safety, a DB early in his time in college in Vanderbilt before moving to linebacker. And the way that Johnny Holland put it, he said the 49ers basically The type of linebacker they look for just needs to run like hell. He needs to run, and keep running. So they look at guys who are DBs earlier in their career who, through just a prodigious increase in size, have become linebacker potential players. And Oren Burks is special because they need a little bit more thump in that room. Those DB conversions might have been leaving them a little bit light. So you essentially have Oren Burks replacing Marcel Harris, the former safety, in one of those fourth or fifth linebacker spots. And Burks is a good 6'3", 235 pounds, much bigger than Marcel Harris, but boy, he can run. And Johnny Holland is excited to beef up the linebacker position with him. All right, if you're just coming in, nearing the finish here, it's been 40 minutes. I'm tired. Like the channel, subscribe to the channel, rewind, watch whatever you need to. I'm taking questions on Johnny Holland and the linebackers, and then I'm going to get going. Greenlaw is a dog, yes. I still remember when Greenlaw stopped Seattle at the goal line. Quinn Price, I look forward to seeing Burks on the field. Yeah, I mean, especially on special teams. He was the Packers' best special teams player last year. Yes, Al Shire had a couple surgeries, but they expect him to be back from back at training camp. I actually was walking right by Aziz at the practice facility yesterday. He was doing sprints with one of the strength coaches, some rehab sprints, obviously, on the side of the field, and he was moving quickly. So Aziz looked like he's progressing well. This I'm not sure about. Greenlaw, Al Shire, it's a good problem to have if you're the 49ers. All right, any questions? Fred is a predator. Any more questions about right here? Here's a good one. How are the 49ers looking as far as further depth at linebacker? All right, this is a perfect way to finish. Why don't we pop open the roster again and take a look at the linebacker position? Great question from Ryan Smiley. Nice picture, too. Pop this one like that. All right, here we go. Warner, Greenlaw, Shire on the front line. Oren Burks, Demetrius Flanagan-Falls. Don't forget about him. Also a former DB, safety at Arizona. But then you go over to the right side, and the blue highlights are draft additions. Yellow highlights are signees from this offseason. Curtis Robinson was on the practice squad last year, Stanford product. He's some depth for the 49ers. Seguno Olubi, hell of a story. Teammates with Drake Jackson in high school. Seguno Olubi didn't really start focusing on football until late in his high school career, so he didn't get a scholarship. Went NAIA, then he went junior college, then he went D2, then he was a walk-on at San Diego State. Long story short, he has gone from that to being a guy who runs a 4.4 40, and the 49ers are happy about his size at the linebacker position. Still a project because he's raw, but I don't care. If you run a 4.4 40 at linebacker at Seguno Olubi's size, you're big enough to play at that second level in NFL, you're a prospect. And Holland is really excited about him, said that his first couple days of OTAs have been good. You have Jeremiah Gemmel. They called him the general at North Carolina. Jeremiah Gemmel, all over the field, had a shoulder injury that tanked his draft stock. 49ers got him as an undrafted free agent. And Gemmel, I have him right behind Warner because he's a backup Mike linebacker. The 49ers want Warner to teach Gemmel the tricks of the trade because they need depth at that backup Mike linebacker position. Really, really intriguing undrafted free agent signing. Marcelino McCrary-Ball in college was more of a nickel linebacker, and I think he's solidly enough built to contribute at the NFL level. I don't know as much about McCrary-Ball, but Holland did tell me that he was more of a nickel backer in college, and I have seen him run a little bit at these practices, so we'll see what happens there. But in general, the 49ers do need depth at linebacker, not just for 2022, but for 2023. Because what's going to happen is that Al Shire and Greenlaw are both going to be unrestricted free agents. Those guys are probably both going to get paid, right? Assuming they stay healthy. You're probably not going to be able to pay both of them. That's where Gemmel, that's where Olubi, that's where Johnny Holland developing these guys comes in. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining today. Go ahead and like the channel, subscribe to the channel. that was an in-depth conversation, right? 45 minutes of me relaying information from the 49ers assistant coaches. I don't think you get this as in-depth anywhere else. So if you like just talking football, no nonsense, this is the place for you. Subscribe to the channel, like it, and obviously The Athletic is the place to be if you want to see all that in-depth written coverage. Would also love you to join there. Everybody take care. Enjoy your Wednesday nights. Thank you again for joining.